So I thought maybe we just start talking about the topic I proposed there, and that's laminations. And I think you saw a picture of a kitchen holder that I made, and for two reasons. One is had I got a lot of blanks from our sale, and looking what to do with them, and we had a need for something, so. It was really my first big attempt at doing laminations. And so I ran the blocks through a planer and then glued them up, and didn't work quite as good as I had hoped, because you can't tell with it stationary, but if it's on the lathe, you can tell that the sections are a little bit out of round, not out of round, but they're not quite even. So I thought that'd be a good topic, see how other people do laminations and glue ups.
By not even, you mean the wood didn't join perfectly along the edge, or what?
Right. So there were tiny gaps that I could fill with CA glue and sawdust a little bit. So you can't really see it, but as it's going around, you can see it going sort of like that. So
this is a laminated bowl I made from a piece of plywood. And I started experimenting with this last year because I made a bunch of these cutting boards.
Yeah.
And they're all laminated. And I made a bunch of them, and then I started making bowls out of those.
Oh, cool.
So, and you can see there's a hole in it because I bolted on, and then I figured out the angle to cut this when it's on the lathe so that all the rings stack. It was a fun math problem.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how'd you figure the angle?
Trial and error.
Okay.
My favorite technique.
So, but I did find out that it's about 23 degrees, depending on the thickness of the board. And then I found a freaking chart on the internet where it'll tell you if the board is this thick, you mic it, and if it's 0.75, you need this angle to stack all your rings. But the one thing I will tell you about laminating that I learned early is don't clamp it too tight. Yeah. And maybe everybody else learned that the same way I did. Is I thought you had to really clamp the heck out of it and get it good and tight to get that joint very, very tight. But I found that I was over clamping it and forcing too much of the glue out. So now I just clamp it just until the gap is gone. And then when I do these, I have a press that has a hole in it. That's why there's a hole in the middle. And then I got a little hand crank on there, and I just clamp it down just until all the gaps are gone, and then I stop. But if I go too far, when I put this on the lathe, I can tell you for a fact that you can blow pieces off of it really easy.
How do you finish the mating surfaces to make them?
Like here?
No, I mean the places where the boards join. Roger said he planed it. Do you?
I start with a cutting board, and these are planed on both sides.
Okay.
So these are perfectly flat. So when I cut one ring and stack it on the next, those two surfaces are already flat.
Oh. Yeah. The alternative, if you got access to a jointer, that's another way to make it flat.
Yep. And then I actually got a really good deal on an actual. I got a machine now that's not on my lathe that uses that has. I don't have it in. I think it's in the. I would show it to you, but it's for making boards into bowls, and that has the graduations on it, so I can set the cutter consistently and evenly. And I finally fine-tuned that to get. That's how I got the wall thickness on this one really thin.
Yeah.
Nice.
But I
So
did,
John, you were saying, is that, so that's really a board from a bowl? You just cut
Yep.
rings out of a thing and
this,
then you just stacked them up?
this came from this.
Because it looked like you had like only 5 thick pieces put together like vertically, but you've actually had them stacked up that way, right?
Right, so I make this, and then I
Yeah.
put it on, and I cut it to make
Cut
that.
circles out of it. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, that's cool.
I'm going the other route. I'm doing a bunch of pepper mills, and I've laminated the wood side grain to side grain.
Oh, right.
But I did that because I wanted a contrasting stripe that ran the same direction as the wood mill,
Yeah.
or as the pepper mill or salt mill.
So,
Th-
John,
This is the first one I did, and I did make a mistake on it. Most of the rings are perfectly, all the grain is perfect, except for that one. I flipped
Yeah,
that
it was
one.
so perfect. I thought it was just one piece. I couldn't tell.
No, and then I got one little spot right there where
Oh,
I was
yeah. Okay.
just a tick off.
Yeah, on that bottom ring.
Yep.
bottom 2.
Yes.
Actually,
So
the second one was probably the one that twisted.
yeah, the rest of them, I made a dozen of these, and the rest of them, I corrected all of that, and I sold them as sets of 4.
Am I the only one left that remembers Jack Wayne coming down to do a demonstration on the board to bowl method? I may be. It was over at Chem West. He mounted a flat board on the lathe, and he actually used a parting tool to
Oh, whoa.
cut the board this way, and then he just kind of lifted it up, and the rings were angled such that all he had to do was glue them together, and he had a bowl.
That's what I did with this one. I
Yeah.
did this one with a parting tool, a piece of
Yeah.
plywood.
It's very impressive to watch. I don't think the product is all that great.
Yeah.
No, the thing I found about lamination is that even if you plane through the thickness planer or joiner, you wind up with very small little variations in the surface itself. And as long as you leave it flat, you don't notice them. But we're going from flat to round, and those variations will show up. So I started putting a little piece of veneer between the surfaces.
Oh, yeah.
And that absorbs that little bit of waste. It's sort of the glue thing again. The veneer absorbs the glue and makes this uniform joining surface, so that when you're going from flat to round, you don't have the little gaps.
Yeah.
That's a cool idea.
So,
Have any
On the
idea? Go ahead.
gluing
Sorry.
there, John, your cutting boards, you glue side grade to side grain, and you probably clamp the bejeebers out of those, right?
No, I mean, I clamp them pretty tight, but when I first started doing it, I wound up getting some separations after I glued them, because I was actually clamping them too tight and forcing too much of the glue out.
Ah, okay.
All you want is a little bit of squeeze out at the joint, just a little.
Yeah.
That's why wood
As long as you
clamps.
don't put too much glue in the joint to begin with, just enough to get the glue to start,
Yeah.
to show that you got.
But the lesser evil is to put too much glue. If you over tighten, then you squeeze it all out. You haven't accomplished anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's why the clamps when you twist the clamps, they don't give you a lot of mechanical leverage. And I think the design is intentional, so you can't over tighten.
Plus than that, you're going to have a difference in the woods. The maple is going to compress, whereas the walnut may not.
Yeah.
And
Right.
even within a piece of wood, you got variations. So the same clamp pressure in one spot is going to give you a different compression of the wood than in another spot. So
You guys have a favorite glue?
Tight
The
bond,
kind of glue is ultimate. What was that?
tight bond,
bond.
ultimate.
I go with tight bond.
Hey, Mike, when
yes,
you use the veneer, to even things out? Do you have any idea how thin is it because it's really thin and it can conform?
Yeah.
Or,
I don't know. It may be that because the veneer is actually a pretty hard little piece of wood. Something conforms to something else, so you don't get gaps. But because it's a different color, I think it sort of distracts the eye if there are any gaps left.
Yeah.
oh, that would, I made this, it's based on a AAW journal article, and it's 3 layers of wood, and I don't notice the gaps.
Oh.
And I didn't have anything fancy to do it with. But what you just said about the colors of the wood may be responsible for that.
Yeah.
May not be that I have great joints. It may just be that I can't see the screw ups.
Even with the appropriate machinery, it's surprisingly difficult to get 2 flat surfaces to match up. You know, you make the big tabletop and it looks great until you notice that there's 1 1/4 of an inch gap over on that end that didn't get joined properly.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the expense of stuff like a thickness sander is really tough to justify if all you're doing is doing it.
Yeah. This is Jim. I do a fair number of laminations and glue ups like that, but all my stuff is small. But what I found to get a good tight glue joint, after shaping everything the way I needed shaped as flat as I can, I touch them to a disc sander. Touch the surfaces that are glued to a disc sander, and then look at them carefully to make sure that they're flat. And then I push them together by hand, and you can tell if they're really sort of almost sticking to one another. And then I glue them up, and I use tight bond too.
Look great on your drum sander.
Whatever happens to be there at the time, it's usually about 100 or maybe 120.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
That
and
actually
by
gives
the way,
the glue some tooth, something a tooth to grab a hold of too.
right.
Well, that's the other thing. I
If
have
it's
found
smooth,
that
it actually won't work.
if you sand it too much, the joint isn't as good.
Well, one thing I found is I have two discs. I have a shopsmith, so I have 2 discs for the shopsmith. One of them I use a Velcro attachment pad for the sanding discs, and the other one I use glue-on sanding discs. The one with Velcro will not give you a flat surface.
No, because the Velcro gives.
Yeah. And but the other one gives a dead flat surface as near as I can tell.
PSA works really well.
I have a question. I've just been looking into segment turning, and they use the tailstock. They have something like a little faceplate on the end with a taper that goes into your tailstock, and then you can tighten it that way. And where would you get something like that? I mean, is there a Woodcrafters or something in that?
The Morris taper attachments?
Right, but it has a screw threaded end on it that you could like screw a little small faceplate on it.
But he's looking at something like the one way where you can spin off the cone and spin on a faceplate.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what you guys use. That's just what made sense for reading this book. And I thought, well, hell, where would you even get something like that?
I think I got Penn State Industries.
Described something like transfer something or others, and it allows you to, the intent is to allow you to mount your chuck on your tailstock, so you can transfer it to another, something on the headstock.
Right. So I heard Penn State Industries one way.
Craft Supplies also.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't see it in that, but maybe I don't,
Look at Packard.
Packard.
I've gotten one from there.
I think I got mine from Packard.
Okay.
Something I've done that doesn't require extra equipment is I've just put a flat board up against the tail center and then move the tail center up tight. The flat board will conform to the surface of whatever you've turned, you know, will orient itself. And then you can use that to put pressure on.
I see. Okay, you don't have to make it quite so complicated, I guess. Just use, yeah, okay.
I made this bowl from a board. Let's try to get it where it shows. I don't know if you can see it, but I made that from a flat piece of wood, just flat board, cut on an angle with a jig that I made to cut it.
Is that different types of wood that I'm looking at?
Well, it's two pieces of wood just glued together flat, and
Okay,
then I mount it on the lathe, and then I have an angle jig that cuts, kind of like Mike was saying. I made it out of a piece of, or I took an old saw blade, a 10-inch carbide saw blade, and cut off one of the teeth on an angle and made a jig so it cuts, kind of just like using a parting tool. Only it cuts the rings, and then I just put it together right on the lathe. Just each piece, I sand each piece, and then put each piece together on the lathe using the lathe as a press.
cool.
It worked real good. And that way I can turn the pieces and get any kind of like a pattern that you want. I don't know if you can see that very well, but
Yeah.
you can see it.
Nice.
Looks like you have a hole in it with the background there, but
Yeah.
The funnel.
Yeah,
yeah,
the camera's not doing a very good job.
yeah.
The one other thing I learned laminating is that your glue does go bad.
Yes.
That your glue has a
Really?
shelf life.
Wow.
Yeah. It was it Jim Hall says he always buys the smallest bottle of glue he can find.
Well,
So that you
I
just-
learned that because I was doing a bunch of glue ups and I bought like a gallon
Yes.
of Light Bond. And
It's glue. What can go wrong, right?
exactly. And then, you know, probably 2 years later, I was gluing something up and all the joints were failing. The glue was just breaking apart.
Yep.
And so I did some research and found out that, well, you can't really keep glue forever.
Yeah.
So
And if it freezes, throw it away.
I buy a much smaller quantity now. And
Yeah.
Yeah, I usually buy it in about quart size because that seems to be about. I find that it's good for about 9 months to a year, and I usually go through a quart in about half a year.
I mean, that's the same for varnishes and any kind of paints that you buy. Just buy what you need, and every time
Yep.
you need it.
And then I have a product that I bought locally from a local guy that if you leave that open, I think the varnish or something evaporates in it and it doesn't
Yeah.
work as well.
Any alcohol-based finish. That's why I tell people if you're not going to use it for a while, mark the side so you can add alcohol to bring it back to volume.
So that's what I need to do is add a little alcohol?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It's
Just get
glass
the
is pretty much fume proof, but plastic is not. Alcohol will go right through the sides of a plastic bottle.
Yeah.
Which is why bourbon always comes in glass, not plastic.
So my other reason for adding lamination to the topic was what Dave Wood did with the rim of his bowls. I thought that was a pretty clever way of doing that. You want to explain that a little bit, Dave?
Well, I make a ring, usually 3/4 of an inch or an inch thick, a little more than you think you're going to leave at the end. So you have some room to cut it away. And I just cut segments. It depends on the length or the diameter of the bowl, the length of the segments. And I've chosen to use 12 segments because it's easy. It's easy math. You have that way 30-degree joints as the segments are coming together, and then you just divide that in half for each piece. So you set your chop saw, your miter to a 15-degree cut, and then put the 12 pieces together, and they'll make a perfect ring. And it's a quick calculation to figure out how long each segment needs to be, depending on the diameter of the bowl. It's the diameter of the bowl times 0.2588. It's that simple. And I usually make those 1/8 of an inch longer, so just again to make sure I have some room to work with it. And then I just use masking tape and put them on a flat surface. I've got a work board that's just an old piece of Formica countertop that's, you know, a couple of feet square, and I just use that so it's nice and flat and the glue won't stick to it. And glue them up, hold them together with masking tape, maybe an elastic cord if you have one is also a good way to do it. And once the glue dries up, and I use super glue, the thick stuff, because it just dries so much faster than the tight bond. And the tight bond also is kind of it's not a nice dark clear joint line where you see the glue. It's kind of milky looking, so I like the look of the super glue better. And you just have to make sure that the surfaces are both completely covered with the glue, and then you put them together. And once it's dried, then I have another piece of flat Formica covered board that I use. It's got sandpaper glued down to it with some of that spray glue, and I just flatten it on that. Just a few strokes is all it takes, and make sure that it's nice and smooth. And then I cut the rim on the bowl. Of course, the bowl blank now, I'm leaving the rim 3/4 of an inch or so thick. And you glue the two together, just turn it upside down and put some weight on it and let it dry. And for that, I go back to the tight bond, and then just turn it, just cut it like a regular bowl. And you can make whatever shape you want out of that rim. But yeah, it's a nice way to finish off something that otherwise might be plain Jane looking, and it's kind of fun to do it. And walnut and maple go particularly nicely together. Whether the bowl is maple and the rim is walnut or vice versa, I do them both ways. And I started doing it because years ago when I first started turning, I bought a dump truck load of old stumps, and the wood was so irregular and sometimes punky that I thought some of the stuff I should have just thrown in the firewood pile. I reinforced with these rings around the top, so they either wouldn't crack or to fill in some voids or whatever. And I like the look of it, so it's easy to do. I just use a chop saw. I don't take the time to mess with a miter on the table saw. And any good chop saw will give you the accurate angles that are plenty accurate. And mine has a stop right at 15 degrees, which makes it the same exact cut every time. So that's what I do. It's a good way to use up scraps that are too small to do anything else with too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
There's a
So
lot of
the
people
discussion, go ahead.
there's a lot of people that do half rings, and then they use they'll do half the circle, then they'll use their
flat
disc
board.
sander or a
Yeah.
flat board
Yeah.
to make up that last little joint so that the circle comes out perfect.
Yeah, it depends on the cuts you get. You might have to do that. Some for who knows what reason, they don't come out exactly perfect in a circle, and then I have to do some of that. But,
Yeah, you just trim across across the diameter.
Yeah.
The discussion of rings reminded me of something really clever I saw a demonstrator do. You know how you make a bowl, and at the bottom of the bowl, the bottom is usually narrower than the top. So you're cutting all this wood away. So this demonstrator cut rings out of the waste wood at the bottom of the bowl. Before he shaped the bowl, he cut these rings out, and then he just hung them on a hook in his shop. And when he had something he wanted to add a ring to, he had all these rings lying around that he could just laminate to the block.
I think Mike Husseluck does that.
Is that right?
He was at the Oregon Symposium, and I know he uses a parting tool, and he'll ring stuff off right on the lathe and throw them off to the side for later.
Cool.
You gotta stop the lathe and unmount the bowl to take the ring off and hang it or do you break it?
Actually, what I saw, this guy just pushed it. He had the bottom toward the tailstock. And so he'd free the ring and just move it back onto
The
onto
tailstock.
the spin, whatever
Yeah.
you call that thing.
Well,
Quill, thank you.
Good.
And I,
So anyone else doing any interesting projects?
I have this. I did this a while ago. I just realized this
Hey!
is kind of a laminated thing.
That looks like spindle work.
yeah.
Yeah, no, yes, my one and only spindle. I saw it from AAW. It's laminated. It says it's like the quarter sawn is the strongest part of the wood if you laminate. So these are quarter sawn pieces at right angles, and then one kind of in the middle, and then two other pieces that goes through there, and it makes a nice little. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
pretty.
Very nice.
It is nice.
So how many pieces
Made it.
do you start with?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
And the center wood is the same as the handle?
Yes, it's ash, and I don't remember what this was. Mahogany, maybe?
Looks nice.
Yeah.
So how did you get the nice joints? I get how you can do the side grain laminations, but you've got things at the end there. How'd you do that?
First of all, I mounted up a piece like that so it's square. I put these three together, and then after that I don't know. I don't remember. So
I bet you what you mounted a square and you cut the handle, and then you mounted the faces for the hammer.
I think that might be right. It's on the AAW site. I just did it from an AAW project. So.
Nice.
The beads of courage bowls were all laminated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was looking for a picture I had of I did a lamp that was laminated a while back.
Well, I'm gonna find out how good my lamination is. I got 4 sets of salt and pepper grinders to do for Christmas presents.
I have sort of an interesting example of lamination. If I can find the pictures. Yeah.
Oh, I've got another one that I'm doing that's laminated. It's an inside out or a hollowed out Christmas ornament. You start with a square blank and you basically cut the inside of the ornament and then quarter it, turn it around and glue it back together.
Okay, so you get the reverse image on the outside. Yeah.
Yeah, I found my pictures. If I'll share my screen.
Go for it.
I may have to do something here. Just a
I was
minute.
going to say, Roger, you may need to enable him to do that.
Yep. I just lost my cursor. There we go. Okay.
Okay.
Oh,
You
nice.
see that?
Oh, wow.
Fun.
Nice.
And the horizontal or the angled stripes are that's laminated dyed birch plywood that I bought. I didn't do that lamination, but the challenge is to glue it up, and because this is what the blank starts with, or I put it on a lathe. And to get there, I start with
You cut those on a chop saw?
yes, I did. So this is what I started with. I take a square blank, cut it on a chop saw, and then I take a piece of the laminated birch plywood dyed. And you can imagine when you put glue on these surfaces, they're going to slide around a lot.
Oh, yeah.
So what I do, I drill an 1/8 inch hole. I don't go through the bottom, but I come down into the bottom piece a fair amount. And I used an 1/8 inch because that's the diameter of skewers. You know, the bamboo skewers you can buy.
Oh, yeah.
So run that down through. So I drill that hole through here at the right angle, and put glue on all the surfaces, slip that skewer down in there, and then I can put clamping pressure straight down on the piece so it doesn't slides around.
So did you do that? Did you do the drill on a drill press and have an angled plate to put it on?
Essentially, well, I drilled the walnut. I drilled that before I chopped it on the saw.
Okay.
And then the other piece, after I chopped the walnut on the saw, I put the piece of plywood on this surface here, and then drilled through that because it doesn't have to be too accurate in terms of
that's
position.
actually pretty. That's actually really clever. I would not have thought to do that.
It took me a while to come up with a scheme because I tried all kinds of other things to keep these things square, and also the size of the pieces. I didn't want to. I wanted to use the minimum amount of this laminated plywood stuff. So I didn't want to have a big piece and have to make it exactly the same dimensions as the walnut block and go through all the hassles of doing that and worried about. So anyway.
Where do you buy the plywood? Where do you buy the colored plywood, Jim?
Well, that I used to be able to get it at Woodcraft, but then the company that made this stuff, this is a couple of years ago, they had a fire and burned down their facility. They're back. It's called Spectra Ply. But the problem I have now is, and I haven't bought any recently, is you see this is 3 colors, I think. Yeah, red, yellow, and green. Now they only make 2 colors, and one of the colors is black. So it's not as pretty.
So Jim, did you try using salt?
For
what?
So seeing your toothpick in there, I remember somebody else's video, they were showing that if you put salt down on the gluing surfaces, it keeps the surfaces from sliding.
Oh.
And table salt.
Interesting. Like gravel.
I wonder if the salt would screw up the glue.
Hearing that earlier that if you over squeeze it, it squeezes out. Well, if you got the little granules of salt in there, you can't over squeeze it. So there's going to be a good layer of glue. It also keeps the pieces from sliding. And then it just dissolves in the glue. And
what would our doctor of chemistry have to say to that?
What? I'm sorry?
Oh, the old salt himself.
Yeah. What would the effect be of the salt and the glue?
Yeah.
Depends on the glue. Like Type Bond 3, I wouldn't do that with, but certainly it's not going to affect anything else.
What's it about Type Bond 3?
Yeah.
It's a different type of glue. It's a polyester glue. And I'm not sure it would make any effect, but I think it would slow things down significantly.
I was going to say, I was wondering if 1 or 2 would, because they're faster, would not be as affected.
I don't know, maybe. The same idea, cutting and gluing for the Celtic knot pen blanks. You cut it once, glue in a piece of walnut, put the other cut off piece, let it glue together, and you make a series of cuts. You wind up with a very nice Celtic knot in your pen.
Yeah, that wood that you're using, Jim, you see a lot of pen blanks that are available out of that. So I guess in your case, you'd have to use a number of pen blanks to get the width that you needed.
Yeah.
Yeah, the pieces I bought were, I think, 2 by 2 by various lengths, maybe of 10 inches or something like that. And then I'd cut off things that I wanted. So I'm disappointed. I've been looking for several years now for a good source of spectra ply that has multiple colors in one glue up rather than just two. And I've been unsuccessful, but I haven't really looked too hard. But just
I was
every
gonna
once in a while.
say vacuum press and some dyed laminates or dyed
Dyed veneers, sure.
Yep,
Make
you
your-
could make
make
your
your own
own, that's for
veneers.
sure. And you
Make
could
your-
make it, use the same approach for thicker laminates too, like 2 or 3 of contrasting wood and put it in an angle, which is what I would do because I like the look of the wine glass stem.
Yeah. Cool.
I just sent a link to through the chat of that wood turning mallet that I showed you guys, and it's a pretty good has a good series of pictures and instructions on how to make it if you wanted it.
Cool.
Thanks.
Yep.
Well, I've been working on a project with doing a hollow form with carving, and one of the things that I'm writing an article for Bill for is it's you know, these standing bands that you use on rotary tools, the Dremel or whatever. Well, they're about 65 cents each if you go to Home Depot and buy a Dremel brand. You go to Amazon, you can get 300 of them for $10. So obviously that, you know, 3 cents versus 60 cents, not a hard decision. So I got a bucket full of sanding drums, put them on, started to use them. As soon as I touched the wood, they blew up. The first one blew up, hit me in the glasses. Thankfully, I had glasses on. Put the second one on, lasted about 15, 30 seconds, and it blew up. So I was thinking that, you know, 3 cents, I could use 20 of them for the same price as a good one. But never thought about the safety aspect of it. But these, basically, you know, it's sort of the old saying that you get what you pay for.
Cheap tools aren't a bargain. They're just cheap.
Yeah. So I found a compromise. Klingspor makes them, and they're about 40 cents each. You buy them in packs of 5, and so far they've lasted as long as I needed. But
Yeah.
it was a little scary thing. As soon as I touched the wood, this thing just blew up, and you know, 15,000 RPM. They hurt.
Yeah.
They're flying all over the place.
So
That's funny, Roger. I was just I'm in the same mindset as you. I just placed an order yesterday on Amazon for some Dremel 1/2-inch drum or barrel, whatever you call those standard things. And I looked at those other ones and I was like, wow, that's a really good deal. And then I started reading some reviews and it said exactly what you said. I put it to it and it blew up. And it's like, you got to think about like all the cost of it, but also the amount of time you take to put another one on and, you know, screw the thing. And
yeah.
so I was like, I'll just do the Dremel, but Klingspor, that's good. I'll remember that one.
Yeah. Plus, they give us 10% discount. So if you log into Klingspor and use your same email that you logged into our website, all the prices are cut 10%.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's good to know.
I think I knew that.
I've also, the ones from Amazon, I have a bunch of the ones from Amazon too, and I find that they burn the wood a little bit easier than the Klingspor ones.
Yeah, they do burn. Yeah, I had that same. When they lasted long enough, they burn.
Right. If they don't blow apart, they burn the wood.
Yeah.
I used when we were doing that bowl turning class, I brought home and I carved out some stuff, and I was using the barrel sander or the drum sander thing on the Dremel with that. So I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
And I bleached it a couple times. I bleached the wood, but this is a blank that we got from Northwoods Figured Woods. So
What did
started
you
doing it, and it's fun.
tell us how you bleach the wood?
So I used the 2-part. There's a wood bleach from Daly's up in Washington. They're kind of a paint chemical manufacturer they do a lot of like varnishes and stuff, and they're really good company. They have a thing called wood bleach, and it's a 2-part, part A and part B. And part A, I think, is like, oh boy, Mike, you might have to help me. NaOH,
Sodium hydroxide.
Yeah, and the other one is H2O2,
Peroxide.
hydrogen.
Yeah.
Real
Get
pretty
that
strong
drops.
stuff. Yeah, don't get that in your eyes. Don't get that in your hands. Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So I did that a couple times, and it's really expensive to do if you're doing a lot of it. So I found an article that says make your own, and just be careful with the sodium hydroxide. So I bought some lye, which is like just drain cleaner, but it's
Sodium
just the
hydroxide.
plain, yeah, sodium hydroxide, but it's just the plain stuff, and it's crystals. So you put the you put the water in first and then the crystals, or the crystals in the water.
Do as you oughta, add acid to water. So
Yeah. Do as you oughta.
water, peroxide, base.
Yeah. So then I made a half gallon of it, or actually a half gallon of that. And then I went to a pool supply store out in Beaverton, I think, and bought some stuff called Baquasil. It's basically a strong hydrogen peroxide. It's for cleaning your pool.
It's designed for Baquasil is designed for hot tubs.
Hot tubs, okay, yeah. And it was like $9 a gallon or something great, or maybe it was 20 or something. But a lot cheaper than buying the 2-part wood bleach from Daly's. So I have those now, and you don't need much. And so you just add a mixture of 1-to-1, part A and part B together. It only lasts, so it doesn't last for very long, like the chemical reaction in it. So I think it's at Daly's at half hour or something.
Yeah, the peroxide is going to break down very quickly.
Yeah,
particularly in the presence of water.
Yeah. So you just kind of slap it on and let it sit for 20 minutes, and then quickly put the remaining bit on, so second coat of it before it the hydrogen peroxide goes away, and then you just let it sit till it dries, and then I do it again a couple times, and just depending on how light I want it to be.
Well, you paint it on, you don't soak it or anything.
I just paint it on with one of those little crappy chip brushes.
Yeah.
I've used the foam brushes before too. You could use those. No?
Yeah.
Mike? Yeah.
You're going to start leaching out the foam, so that just the natural bristle brush is probably the safest thing.
Super. Yeah, those really like 50 pack of the cheap brushes you use once and throw away.
Yeah.
And you don't have to rinse out the sodium hydroxide?
Well, they say you should, or that you can, but pretty much inert, doesn't it, Mike, after a while?
No, well, the sodium hydroxide is going to turn into a sodium oxide, and eventually it will come off when you wipe off most of it.
Yeah, you wipe it off, definitely.
It's going to stay in whatever water phase you have. So as you wipe off the bleach, there may be some left on the. I wouldn't lick it to see if it tastes salty. And anytime you're using sodium hydroxide, be careful. Base burns are much worse than acid burns.
Yeah, I
ask me how I know that.
I keep my face shield on for that stuff.
Yeah.
So just in case it splashes or anything, I have gloves that I put on, so no skin is.
No, the peroxide is not so bad. It's going to bubble and burn and go away. But
the drain cleaner,
the drain cleaner,
you don't want drain cleaner anywhere but in the drains.
Yeah.
Drain cleaner is designed to dissolve fat.
Yes.
And meat and other kinds of things that plug up your drain. Well, what are we made of?
Mostly fat.
Mostly
fat.
Certainly on the outside.
Fat and water.
Yep.
You don't want to mix the bleach with the ammonia.
No.
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 This was a piece that I bleached as well. Took a little longer. I put probably like 4 or 5 coats of it on, and this is just a maple. This is what it looked. That's unbleached maple right there, and then it's bleached. all the way
How
around.
do you finish it after you've applied the bleach?
Good
You're
question.
gonna ask me that. I think I just wiped it off, and then I think I put just some micro aggregate, or not micro aggregate, microcrystalline wax that I got
Yeah.
from some place called Doctor's
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Wood something or other. I don't know.
Some
But
guy
anyway,
peddling his drugs.
Yes. And then I just put that on, and then I used a buffing wheel after it dried to just buff it all off.
And does the bleach raise the grain a bunch?
A little bit. Yeah. You can sand it a little bit if you want to, but I find that it doesn't go in. It doesn't, it's not like when you ebonize with that vinegar and iron solution,
Yeah.
the iron oxide, that will go in pretty far. The bleach, not so much.
Probably get around. You could probably get around it a little bit if you were to raise the grain with just regular water and sand before you bleach it.
I was getting to that. So I do that. I raise the grain twice and just rub off the nubs twice.
And then apply the bleach.
And then apply the bleach. Yeah.
Thanks.
Cool. Well, my carving project is, I don't know if you can see this.
Ooh.
Whoa.
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
Still working on it, but so the job was to lower the wood from this here, and then so I did that, and then painted it with a copper paint, and then used pyrography to burn these in.
Nice.
So it's a test piece before I try to do the real piece, but I learned a lot. One of the things that I was trying to go for a what do they call copper pots when you bang on them, you get this ripple effect on the outside.
Hammered?
Hammered effect, yeah.
Yeah, hammered effect. So I didn't make the background real smooth because I was hoping to make it look like that. That was a mistake because when you go to burn it, you don't get good patterns like the circle pattern here. Didn't really come out that well because it wasn't on an even surface. But this is from a picture that I saw that I wanted to try to duplicate. And the picture, the way the guy did it in the picture, he made the background was all black, and then he carved it with any kind of bit. So there were depressions. And then what didn't work for me was he used what he called a dry brush paint mechanism, where you go with just a tiny amount of paint on a brush, and then just try to do the surface part of your so that the indentation part doesn't get any paint. That didn't work for me because as soon as I did that, all the paint went in the indentations, and you didn't get the effect that he was going for. So, but anyways, this is what I was trying to do with the sanding bands is get especially get the corners and stuff, which is wasn't that great, but it's a good practice piece. The next one will be a whole lot better, I hope. But yeah, the pyrography is what we learned from Molly. What's the lady's name? Yeah.
Janice Levy.
No, it was Molly.
Molly Winton.
Yeah. And the bits that she had us made are the bits that they're not bits, but they're the tips for the burner we made in class. So that was pretty cool.
Make them out of copper?
Pardon?
What'd you make the tips out of?
It's a special metal. Do you remember what it is, Mike?
It's a NiCad wire.
NiCad wire, yeah.
Oh, okay. So same stuff you make foam cutters out of.
Yeah.
I I just made one out of a piece of MIG welding wire.
Hmm.
Isn't that really
Hammer-
thick?
It's basically mild steel.
Well, right. Well, it's for grade 5 welding, grade 5 steel, and it actually held up pretty good, and it was easy to make and cheap.
Yeah, as long as you control the current so it doesn't fuse.
Right. I mean, I got it hot, not all the way to where it was red hot, so it didn't melt it.
How
But it
thick
was,
are they? Because these are like 21, 22 gauge.
yeah.
Oh, you can get welding
You can get welding wire at a lot of different.
the best in.
Hey, welding wire is designed to be fed through the torch, so it's actually fairly thin and fairly pliable.
Did you hammer it thinner at the point where the heat was concentrated?
I didn't know.
You just-
I
you
made
just-
circle. I was making a spiral.
You just bent it and connected it and,
Yep. Just hooked it in.
Sure.
okay, cool.
And I did it because once I was done with that project, I just took it out and threw it away. I didn't bother cleaning it or nothing. It
Yeah.
was cheap.
Did you charge it with your welder, or how'd you supply it?
Burn Master. I put it in my Burn Master.
Oh, cool. So anyone else working on any cool projects?
Well,
I took your advice. Your advice and made this into it. Go ahead.
Just got a general question. What do people use to do their carving with?
Dremel.
Mean power carving?
Yeah. Just a Dremel?
Well, you can. There are two main types of power carving. There's the Fordham type, where the motor is in the base. Then you have a long cable with the working end at the end there. And then you have a called a micromotor, where the motor is actually in the handpiece. The micromotors are a lot easier to work with, because you don't have this big cable that you have to worry about. Plus, they go a lot faster, but they don't have the torque of a Fordham. So if you really want to hog stuff out, the Fordham power has the torque to really move stuff quickly, especially if you use an aggressive burr. The finer work with a micromotor, that's what, if you saw Kathleen's demo, she was using micromotors for the work that she did for piercing.
Yeah, I was trying to avoid $600 or $1,000 for those types of pieces of equipment.
That was the NFK. That's the one that goes 300,000-400,000 RPM. That's for piercing. But for the micromotor that she had, they're about $275, $300, and so they're still expensive, but they are really nice if you're going to be doing much carving.
You have a brand or
try a cheap Dremel that I just got from my dad to see if I could do some simple carving with it.
Yeah, Dremels go what, about 15,000 RPM?
Something like that.
Not
I
bad.
think,
Yeah.
The
I think mine
micromotors,
goes 25,000.
the micromotors go 30 to 40,000.
you have
Yeah,
a source for
that's
those?
like-
Do you have a source for those motors?
Treeline is a good one. Treeline USA is their website.
What's
They've got about
the name?
everything for carving.
Treeline, tree as in trees,
Okay.
line as USA. And they have a lot of carving stuff. They have all the burrs and bits that you want for it. They have some nice videos too on using the machines.
Are they affiliated with Craft Supply?
My understanding that the owner of Treeline was a partial owner of Craft Supply.
Because they're both in Provo.
Yeah,
So
and they split off. I don't think there was a disagreement or anything. I think they just wanted a different line of tools. And
divergence of interest. Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, Yeah, that's where I've gotten mine. They also have the burn masters and the pyrography stuff that
Yeah.
everything you need for decorating your bowls and stuff.
Treeline also has a cable attachment for your Dremel that you can convert your Dremel to a reciprocating carver. And it comes with 4 little chisels that, it works really well. It makes a completely different cut than any of the rotary carvers. But there are applications like, they're just applications where the reciprocating charger is a better option.
Yeah, if you're going to do something like a relief carving, you have to move a lot of wood. They move a lot of wood pretty quickly, and they leave a glass smooth finish behind.
There's a Makita reciprocating carver that is about $90, but it works really well. It's like a Dremel tool that you hold the carver, but it does the reciprocating motion.
Yeah.
Well, it's not elegant, but it is lamination of sort, and that's what's keeping me busy lately. Rebuilding the damn fence.
Oh, it looked like you were stepping up in the world.
Yeah. got some got some gaps to fill in, but we'll do those later.
You just CA and sawdust.
Yeah. Coffee and epoxy, I think.
Coffee and epoxy.
Yeah.
So you started with the horizontal planks. Is that what I see? And then went vertical?
Now this is the fence line, and the steps drop down to enter the house, and then I just laid in. Finally got to get one of those little 22 caliber nail drivers for concrete.
Yeah.
That was fun to play with.
Yeah, those are fun.
I inherited one of those. Those are a blast.
Yeah, pop in the furring strips and then just And I realized it was just easier to replace the damn step treads than thread them in all the time. So anyway, from large to small, we got to do what we do.
Looks like a deck is renewing the deck is coming next.
Yep. Yeah, that's the next bit of the project.
I was gonna say, there was a guy in the neighborhood was redoing his deck. He basically took it apart, ran it through his planer, and put it back together.
Put it back on. Now there's enough holes in this one. It's just going to get. Well, the thing I was at Lowe's. I like dealing with Lowe's. First of all, because I get a pretty good discount from them, but their selection of lumber is just not as good as almost any place else. But they at least had those for me. So
yeah, I have a tendency to lean towards Home Depot because they employed all of my kids.
Yeah.
I don't run deck boards through my planer anymore. The first time you hit a nail and take out your blades, you'll never do it again.
It stops being a cheap
I wasn't the
solution.
one doing it.
Well, you shouldn't have any nails in anything you buy at Lowe's or Home Depot.
No,
but they
it's just
staple the
palm drive.
crap out of it. They staple the crap out of it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and depending on when you get it, it could be 25% moisture.
Oh yeah.
At least.
Especially at Home Depot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You need to get a carbide spiral cutter head, John.
I do. That's why I bought it. I have a Helix.
Nails don't slow that down.
Oh no. And unlike, I used to have, my Powermatic used to have the spiral blade on it, the 15S.
Yeah.
And just a staple from a piece of lumber from Home Depot took out that blade. And so I upgraded it to the helical head. So now, at least if I do catch something in my planer, then all I got to do is turn
it 90 and you're there.
Yeah.
And,
Oh.
that
Okay,
may be a
guys,
little bit.
it's been a good hour. Anyone else have anything you want to talk about before we sign off?
So
Well, if you
I
don't-
quickly wanted to show John my bowl that I
Oh,
did.
nice.
Remember that one that you were talking about? You
Yeah.
said make a
Yarn bowl. Yeah.
Yeah.
I made my first yarn bowl.
Nice.
You will be amazed how quick that'll sell.
It's amazing. So at noon, the AAW is doing a master series where every month they have, like, we had David Ellsworth do last month, and today they're doing John Jordan.
Yeah.
So keep an eye. The other initiative going forward is the Turners Without Borders is going to do a Spanish demo sometime in January. And it's going to be an IRD all in Spanish.
Oh, cool.
Has Jordan's new liver improved his disposition any?
I do not know. I do know he's up and turning, though. He's doing an IRD today, so.
Yeah, well.
I want to let everyone know the bowls at for Beads of Courage, they've been delivered. John and Luann drove it up to Seattle a few weeks ago. I have an article that we're going to publish for our newsletter, and we also sending that article into the AAW magazine.
Where did they go in Seattle? Do you know?
Yes.
Where?
He's looking.
Yeah, we got a real nice card. I'll fax it and send it to you guys. Mary Bridge Children's Foundation.
Okay.
Yeah, a good Sam Foundation. So we got a really nice thank you letter. I'll scan and send everyone. But hopefully we'll have an article in the AAW magazine shortly.
That's nice.
So you see John again giving lots of thanks for all the work he's put into it, because it was a lot of work.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of bowls. I mean, how many did we wind up donating?
28.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So so guys, get back into the workshop, work on Christmas, stay safe over Thanksgiving, and
oh yeah,
we'll talk again next month.
Roger, I got a quick question for you.
Yeah.
On this auction, where do we pick up our stuff?
On the auction, you mean?
Yeah. Well, never mind. That's I'm off. Cascade.
I think you're talking about Cascade, and Harvey was on.
Yeah, I think actually we're delivering that stuff. But it's not me delivering. But I think if you check with Gary Borders or Steve Walgrave, they can tell you.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Sure.
Okay, guys.
Thanks.
All right. Have a good weekend.
Bye, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye.